It was very interesting because, I know that Chris honestly never really wanted to write a book. He only wrote it because there were other people that were going to write it about him, and he wanted to make sure that the people he served with got the credit they deserved. So it wasn't something we ever thought was going to be a huge seller, and then when it was, that in itself was a surprise. And then when it was, being talked about, they were going to do a movie, it was like, oh wow, that's just a different level. And he's a humble man, and I feel like I'm a very humble person too, so it was different. I think I was so passionate with Jason Hall, the screenwriter, that Chris is not the stereotypical cowboy, and he is not the stereotypical warrior or Navy SEAL. And I really wanted to make sure they did not put that on him, because he wasn't. He was truly just a man of tremendous heart and character, and I wanted to make sure that all those facets of him were brought in, because without them, I don't think that people would get it. We all have different quirks or different things about our personality, but one thing that I noticed about Chris is he had an energy about him that when he would come in a room, he had this odd mix of, it was fun and it was exciting to see him, and he put people at ease, which, people would meet him and think, oh, the American Sniper, they would tend to not know what to expect or not want to make a misstep, and then all of a sudden they'd be laughing and they'd be like, man, you're so easy to talk to, and people still to this day tell me, I only spent one day with the guy and I felt like he was my best friend. That's the kind of thing that, without having him alive to represent that in person or for people to see it in interviews, I wanted them to somehow get that on screen, and I felt like it was an impossible thing for them to really do, honestly. But I think they did a good job in the end. Amazing. Like, really, there was a while where I just didn't have the words, because he did such a study of Chris, and I spent, hundreds of hours with the screenwriter, and then Bradley took all of that and then went above and beyond what he had to do, and, read our emails and watched family videos, visited our family, and he came up with the most subtle things. And, it was the way that Chris would kind of, somebody would be praising him and he'd kind of, look down, or he had a seriousness about him, and then he had a seriousness about what he was being asked to do, truly. And that was something that, he was a man of few words, so you have to see it in Bradley to know it. You have to sense it in Bradley, because he can't say it in words, because Chris didn't say it in words. And I give Bradley so much credit for doing a dialect, especially a Texas dialect. It's very, very difficult, and Chris had sort of a mix of some different places that he had lived, and then Bradley had to physically transform, and that required a tremendous amount of dedication. He listened to the workout music Chris worked out to. He thought like Chris. He talked like Chris, the whole time he was going through this, and he just embodied him in the end. I cannot imagine anybody doing this better, to the point where Chris's friends have seen the movie and said it was almost eerie how much it was like just watching Chris. And I think that's rare. I really think that's rare, that somebody can embody another person to the point where it's the way he sniffed, really. Like, there's a point when Chris is on the sniper rifle and he just does like a little sniff, and it's perfect. It's what Chris did. And the people who knew him really well have commented on just that alone. And Bradley didn't have to do that. The audience wouldn't know that that was Chris. And I think that's why it's almost eerie when we watch, because it's the mannerisms, it's the way he holds his shoulders, and his heart and his humor, and it came across, I feel, very, very well.